Well, good morning, everybody. Raise your hand if you're here. Raise your hand if you're not all here. I know everybody's hand goes up. So these are last week's flowers, but that's the best we can do. We had a hard freeze in between. They'll go off stage in a minute, and Gary did this morning with sunflowers. And what's this called, dock or something? So dried things in the fall, you can do that. So, and Jerry brought almond joys for us today because she said this class has been such a joy, and I said, I think it's because you think I'm nuts. That's the almond, that's the almond part, or almond. Gary and I were in, my brother and sister lived in Puerto Rico for 2 years, and they had a beach house where they got to rent the upper floor from the landlord, and the landlord, just interestingly, his father was the inventor of Gore-Tex. Anybody know about Gore-Tex? Well, that's another Molly class, I'm sure, for chemistry. But Brian Gore was in the little tiny apartment downstairs, so we could rent out the upper floor to people. They had it for 2 years, but Gary and I went there when nobody was there except Brian was in his apartment, and we didn't know him. And so they said, okay, park in this, the lane, through the grass. It's a beach house, and there's a lawn, and they get lots of rain there, so it's very lush. But there was tracks, and they said, you'll be fine if you park on the tracks. So in the night, there was a storm, and then the next morning about 11 o'clock, because we jet-lagged in, and Brian came upstairs, and he just said, I just wanted to meet you guys, welcome. Did you hear the big storm last night? I said, yeah, it was kind of neat to hear it. And he said, well, you might want to take a look at your rental car. Now, I'm telling you this because it was on the old Almond Joy plantation. So they had coconut palms and they had almond trees, right? And then there were these almond tree or coconut palms that were, I don't know, from here to that old clock away from the car, and there was another set of palm trees over here. And apparently, he said, I've never seen this, but this tree slingshotted its coconuts onto our rental car. Be sure you take out insurance if you're on the Almond Joy. So there's a special meaning that I get an Almond Joy candy bar this morning, and you all can as well. And there's Snickers up here as well. I tried to find Chuckles, and I think there should be a candy bar called Outright Laughter, but they don't make those either. Anyway, it's so great to have had you in this class. And so we're going to start today and get this up here. We're segueing, we're moving on past romantic into it. I can't guarantee that we could get through everything, and you can't because the music is so vast. But here we are, and here I'll take the clicker for the moment, and I'll hand it back to you. So today we're going to have a lot of live music. So Chris Hahn is going to join us. And so I have to ask, I'd like this to happen when everybody's here. But yesterday was Chris's birthday. Today is Cheryl, our friend Cheryl's birthday. Tomorrow is Marjorie's birthday. So we're going to sing happy birthday, but Chris and Marjorie aren't here right now, so if we can time it, we'll do it when they're all here. You just heard this wonderful piece by Chopin. This looks like it's the portrait of Chopin, but it actually, and you've seen this, so this is a little review before your final exam later this hour. This is the real portrait, and that's with Georges Sand, the Aurora du Devant, and she was the author, Georges Sand. And they spent the winter on the island of Mallorca in 1829, let's say somewhere around in there. And that's where he wrote his 28 preludes. It probably was 1830-something. You can fact check that. I try to be honest, but sometimes you have to make it up, I guess. And so here's the complete painting. So you get this portrait of Chopin because there weren't so many. You know, he was an incredible composer, but probably impoverished in a way, although it's said that he taught the aristocracy in Paris. He gave lots of piano lessons to people that could say they studied with Chopin, but nobody asked him to play because they just did it because they could afford lessons and probably to support him. So that's a little bit there, and then we move on. We're going through quickly, and now we're moving. Chopin lived in France until his death, right? 1849 he passed, and then about a half a century later, Impressionism in music is what we'll think a little bit about this today, was settling in. But Impressionism was first referred to art. And so aesthetic and philosophical, and all these things are ebbing and flowing, and Baroque is this, and classical is that, and then Romantic comes as sort of the antithesis of classical restraint, and so it's very lavish. And then Impressionism develops in France before it sort of spread, but it was first in art. And this painting, they say 1872, but it's not necessarily dated. It's not written on the painting. And this painting is, I think it's at the National Gallery right now. It's on tour. So you have until something like February 1st to go. Is the National Gallery in DC, or is it? Yeah, I think it's there. You can look it up. But it's on a tour, and it's been in, say, Amsterdam and in New York or in DC as well. So that's available for your viewing pleasure. But it was a derogatory term. You know, this was supposedly a new style of painting where you didn't see for sure that that's for sure a boat. I guess it's a boat. And there's some smokestacks, I guess, and there's the sunrise kind of peeking through the soot of the smoky towers of 1871 or 2 or 3. So this painting was titled, it was the painter's or the artist's name for the painting was Impression. Impression, soleil levant, the rising of the sun. So that was in 1874. There was this exhibit of new paintings in France, and this was in there, and so that became a kind of a derogatory, oh, it's just an impression. It's not a real painting, and the realists in France were not so happy that this was happening. Later they claimed, they said they were the father of Impressionism or something later after it caught on. But you think of that, that's the beginning of Impressionism. But then you look in Wikipedia where all good things can be learned, and, or at least thought about. And so here's a painting from 1839. So you see how things are overlapping. So here's a hint of Impressionism happening in Britain by a British artist, JMW. I don't know the JMW. It won't be, if I don't know it, it won't be on the final exam, so don't worry. So Turner, a famous artist, had painted this, and it's, without calling it Impressionism at all, I don't even know if it's an inspiration, but it was, you know, artists can do what they want, and Beethoven could do what he wanted, and Chopin could do what he wanted, and Fanny Mendelssohn, the sister of Mendelssohn, could do what she wanted, but she couldn't do quite as much because she was a woman. So she had to actually slip some pieces into Mendelssohn, her brother's works. And this, so later we say, oh, that one was by Fanny, but she couldn't claim it. And we had that whole thing in life. So, and here we have our last week. And there's my friend Ellen, who needed to practice the piano a little bit. And I used to tell her that we got to work together years ago. You need to practice the piano. And here she is practicing. And so that's wonderful. She's taking lessons with Marjorie now, and that's great. And so there was a bouquet. And now you can see what happened to our garden. So you see that nice little dead flower there, and these here, and they'll come off stage. Somebody will come and rescue them. And so we're into autumn now, and for sure winter will come. So French Impressionistic art happened, and in your own time you can go down here and click on some of these, and it takes you through a little series of paintings that you can explore on your own time. And here we have Claude Debussy. And this guy, he was like, you know, I keep telling you, our kids are taking music theory right now in room 105, the famous big room on the classroom on this floor. And here was Debussy in France, and he was taking music theory, and he'd stay after class, and instead of going like, he just sort of got, and doing different things, and he was breaking all the rules. You know, if you play this, you have to go here. And he would think, well, why? Why can't you just go here and then here and then here and then? And he just started exploring all kinds of things. Well, sometimes the bad kids in music theory turn out to be the next genius, right? Because they thought outside the box. My mom kept trying to box me up, but here I am. And so that's Debussy. And so Impressionism came to be called music impressionism, musical impressionism. So Impressionism found its way into other areas. So because in music we're painting with sound, right? So we are also painters, pianists and trumpeters and violinists. So we paint with sound on the canvas of time. I think that's a nice thought. Musical artists, because music is a temporal art, meaning it exists only in time. You can look at the score, but you can't hear it until somebody plays it. Now we have CDs, and now we have technology to do that. Debussy preferred the title or attribute symbolism. And symbolism is literary, partly, and mostly, and it's an idea where, let's say there's a poem about the moon, but it's in the loneliness of the moon, but it's really an allegory for some person whose heart is aching, and so there's a symbol, kind of. And then words become very important, and the French are very good with words, even if they don't fully pronounce every letter. So it's very elegant, très elegant language, and so the symbolism would also be choices of words sometimes, because the words just felt so delicious when you looked and read out loud. So symbolism was another possibility, but Impressionism is the name that stuck for impressionistic art and impressionistic music. So there would be, I guess, literature. Jerry's going to tell us, our Almond Joy lady will tell us later. If isn't that interesting down there in the bottom? He says two things. So he was a little bit ambiguous about what term he liked, impressionistic or symbolism. But he did say only imbeciles would use impressionistic label with reference to his music. So I guess we're all imbeciles. So if you've learned nothing, you've learned that. But it was 2 years earlier, he claims that music is more suited to impressionistic label than the visual arts. So take your pick. So this is the really neat thing, though. Impressionism evokes rather than depicts. So music always emanates from the instrument, from the soul of the performer, from the soul of the artist-composer. So music has its own presence and its own communication. In all my years of teaching, I would gradually be telling students, when you're playing music, you're conveying meaning. Just two words, conveying meaning. To convey meaning is different from just playing the notes. So we seek to ascertain the emotion or the mood or the depiction or the evocation of the musical composer artist, but in playing it we seek to convey the meaning of that piece. So we're recreating the score in a way. So this is just quickly, you were listening if you came in, and I see if I can just get it started. So this piece is wonderful. It's one of the most famous, Clair de Lune, The Light of the Moon, Moonlight. So that's for, I always embed these with a beautiful performance by a wonderful artist. And I won't do it now, but I was giving a classroom session. They were at least as nice as you guys. The whole school of Condon, you know, it's like K through 8, right? And then the kids get on the bus and go to Sealy for their high school years. But I was up there doing a session for the kids. And they go into the gymnasium because that's where they have the little upright piano. It's a pretty good piano. And of course, no windows because you're in the basketball part of it. There's windows out in the lobby as you enter the gymnasium there. But there wasn't a good place to be in the school part of it, the building next door. So we went into the gym, and I'm playing away, and all of a sudden, every light in the whole county, not county, but the whole Highway 83 corridor goes out. We found out later a squirrel had gotten itself into the substation and shorted out, and then that made a domino effect. And those squirrels, watch out. Gary can tell you about the squirrels in our garden. And anyway, so every light was out except one little orb. So of course, and some of you will know the piece, it was totally dark. I couldn't even see the keys, so I could just pretend I'm closing my eyes, but that's the darkness. So the Moonlight Sonata, and then I was trying this as without. So that one little light was like that bulb up there, and that was it. But it was kind of fun, and they just thought they probably don't remember anything except that is in their lives forever, because we spent the next 45 minutes waiting for the buses to come and pick them up, right? Because you could say school was out for the day, but they had more fun, and then we went, and all kinds, anything spooky music. So it was the best day of their lives. And anyway, so that was fun. And then the lights didn't come on for hours later, so, we didn't know. I mean, they could have come on any time. And we could have all gone outside and sat in the lawn, because it was daylight, right? But they were just having more fun in the dark. First time students have actually declared, I'd rather be in the dark, so that some of them are in the dark probably about many things. But anyway, that was fun. So you'll listen to these things on your own. But I wanted to talk to you a little bit before we get into all the performing of the hour and a half here, that the Debussy in his figuring out, he wasn't the only one that figured this out. But if you take, and I'm going to go back there, this is the one I want to show you. So I'm going to go, it's a little tricky. It's because everything I'm trying to teach requires that you know something, right? And so if you feel like you don't know enough, it doesn't make as much sense. But just think of a scale, and Barbie's going to point here. She's been appointed to point. Yes, and it's that red button. So D flat, you can point first, the lowest one. So then if I play D flat, and then I play E flat, and then I play F, and then G flat, and then A flat, and B flat, and C, and D flat. Those are do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do in D flat major. So that's a normal scale using all the notes of the scale. If I did D major, it's different notes, and Barbie can point a few. There's the low D, E. So you use combinations of white keys and black keys to get the 7 notes, do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, and then back to do. If you heard the sound of music, you know the song. So that's do, re, mi. But if you go back to D flat, and now I'm not going to play D flat and then E flat, look at the E flat. I'm going to leave that note out, so I'm going to play every other note. So then if you go D flat, then I go to the purple or the blue on the top, you'll see do, mi, so, oh no, sorry, ti, do, mi, so, and then E flat. And that's every note of the scale, but it's by skipping every other note. Does that make a little bit of sense? So if you do that, you get different chords. Or, sorry, there we go. And you get the different chords that we call them triads because it's 3 notes. So here's your D flat major chord, and here's your F minor chord. And if I use the A flat as the next one, I get A flat major, and then I get C minor. Sorry, I get C diminished, I apologize. And then E flat minor, and finally G flat major. And then I've played all the chords that are in that key. I think I even got the B flat major one, maybe not, or B flat minor. So those are the chords, and so Debussy would start exploring, and this one is up at the top, and it's too much information for me to go into in great depth, but the very first notes of this piece that I'm going to play for you as I step into my performance car is going to be this. So the first 3 chords, I've circled them, and there's all kind of information, and we won't get through all of it, and you'll look at it, and you'll think it's hieroglyphics, and if you can do this, you can translate the hieroglyphics of Egypt. But it's kind of that. It's a symbolic language. So you have the first thing, and that's your foundation. And then instead of going, he takes this last chord that I showed you in the previous screen. And it's just a pretty sound, and he liked the sound. It didn't matter that it didn't match the notes. And then, and that also isn't in that chord, but it kind of is in this one. So he explored different sounds, and it was just, he loved the beautiful sounds. That's enough to know, I think. And so I want to play this for you, and Barbie can point along, and then you'll see upside down triangles coming in underneath in the bass clef there. Barbie, you can show them. And remember when we showed Beethoven, the four-note theme to that sonata, they used the four notes, and that's called a motive, or a motif, if you will, a tiny little cell of information. So here's a motif. So you go. And I'll do my best to play through the piece for you, and Barbie will show you as we go. But that's the first page with this little. They're pretty harmonies, but there's almost a melody in there. And then, now later for me in the piece, later you hear this. So if it's reflections in the water for me when I was a kid learning this piece, it was like raindrops, kind of. Here were the little raindrops. Or you have your gutter outside and there's the rain that's over and the little drip is coming out of the gutter onto the sidewalk or something. So composers do that, and if they are, every note that you play as a musician flows to another note. Maybe it flows into silence, but it's flowing. It's not just a note that's sitting there. So music exists in time. So the flow of the music is what you're gaining. And the heart of the music is what you hear in the beauty of the chords. The idea that things recur. So music at its best is always organic, which does not mean, and I put it on as multiple choice in the midterm, it would say organic in music means composed without pesticides was one of the choices. Or music that totally hangs together because it grows out of itself, right? And that's, of course, the correct answer. And everybody gets it correct unless they're just being little snits. And that's the snicker they get from me. So anyway, so this is organic unity, music flowing and growing out of itself. So these are the little roots that are planted at the beginning, and then, or the germination, the seeds, if you will. And these little seeds are motifs or motives, and they become something. And on the top of the second page here, you see this is the reflection in the water. The name of the piece is Reflet dans l'eau, reflections in the water. So if you see trees up above of the lake, that's the trees above the lake line. But if it's a very nice still or just slightly rippling water, you get a reflection that you can see. And you put that together. So you get the idea that's reflective. Everything that went down here comes up in the reflection. So in a way, it is like visual arts. You can visualize almost something going on. And then you get this, a new little outburst of something. Maybe a frog jumped out of the water and there's ripples or something. It doesn't have to be pictorial, and it isn't meant to be, but we are painting with sound. So then you get the reflection and the trees, and then a little ripple, and then that. this has a special name, and you asked me last week if you memorize music, is it difficult? It's less difficult if you understand kind of what's going on. So an analysis of that would say Debussy figured out how to he was kind of, this is, but if you move this note to this one, and then that note to this note, you get that beautiful harmony. And only one note didn't belong. That note is the Zoifzer, and then the next one, wrong note going to the resolution. And the construction is exact. So like you're building a house and you got a 2x4 here, and 16 inches later you got to have another 2x4. And that's parallel, parallel, parallel. So this is parallel construction, but it's because it's exact, meaning all those notes are the same distance in each of the new. But when you're listening, it's called planing. Not like, well, kind of like an airplane. An airplane is planing the air. And this is planing the same construction. It's on the same exact plane. If I changed one note, and instead of going, if I went something different, it would be parallel but not exact. So then it's parallelism. So you get the idea, you learn these things. But they, in a way, they help you know the piece as a performer. I'm not thinking, oh, I'm planing here, and I'm chromatic here, and I'm this and that. It's still all things to become a whole piece. It's a lot of information. Here's another new idea, and the bottom of the page, the second page, and then you can click to the right, and it continues the right clicker. Sorry, there. The C flat going to an E flat. That's the next new idea. It may have come out of some old idea, but composers are introducing something else, something new, something beautiful. So you're getting all this information while you're listening. In the bottom of that third page there, the upside down triangles, bottom at the page, there you're getting there, Barbie, very good. She's hired. Okay, and then the next page you get something at the bottom, whole tone scale it says. And all that means that instead of having this scale, let's see, some of those notes are not a whole step apart, but a whole step means that there's a black key in between two white keys. So A to G is a whole step. So down here, G to A, sorry. That's a whole step. And then instead of going to B flat, maybe you go to C flat. Barbie has perfect pitch, so she knows where I am. D flat. So every note is exactly 2 half steps away from the previous note. And so you get a new scale that has only 6 notes. So it's so Debussy explored other scales. Sometimes, I don't need to tell you what they are, but he could even make up scales. Chopin actually used one last week that is rarely used, and now it's big in jazz, called the octatonic scale or the diminished scale. And so there were all kind of interesting things composers could do. But Debussy was this thinking outside the box guy. So let's go to the next page, and just that's your whole tone scale. And then, there we go. So this little new theme, see, I introduced it earlier. And then here he takes, and then he goes, let's see. And that's the climax of the piece. So he uses that new idea to propel. So it's not different. It's different from Beethoven, but there's things that are common, right? Propelling toward a climax. Unfolding, organic unity. composers think about these things. I've already forgotten your name, but raise your hand, the guy that worked at Juilliard. So tell us your name. Keith. Keith? Keith. And he's a composer, and he composes songs more than instrumental. And he's here, and he's patient with me. And we met this morning because I don't get to know all of you unless just something pops out, like Almond Joy, for example. Anyway, so these ideas are always emanating from the composer. And so that's that idea. And sometimes on the next page, you take that new idea down at the key change on the fourth system down. So, see, I have to get in the right octave. And then later. So he's taking ideas, he's changing rhythms, he's changing where it happens. But you'll feel those things, and you don't have to even know them or even care about it. But if you go to the last page, then he takes, just click one more, and you get to that. Or at the top. First he goes, let me get there, fast. And these are parallel rather than planing because, it's not exact, I won't even tell you why, but it becomes parallel because some of the notes were a half step instead of a whole step apart. But the sound was great, so. But he's slowing the rhythm down very fast, and then slower, and the same, and then slower yet. So they're putting the brakes on, kind of, in the music. Does that make a little bit of sense, kind of the feeling of it? So then at the end, you get the upside down triangles. In the third system, Barbie, they're end of the third system, and then he takes out, if you take out the middle note, you get this. So I turned the triangles up, right side up, just to show there's a difference, but it came out of something. Okay, so I'm going to play that, and then we'll move on to, I just want to keep track of my time. Good, we're pretty close. So Chris is going to come and play because he has a 10 o'clock class, so he'll hang out back here. And then Marjorie's coming as well. I don't think we'll all be here at the same time, so we'll sing happy birthday to somebody in absentia, but you don't have to say Marjorie in absentia, you know, or whatever. Okay, here we go. I'll shut this off because it might pick up when I do a swear word. You are hired. Oh my. All right, great. So, the very last two notes of this are these notes from the water drops. But he just takes the two that are part of the harmony. So it isn't anti-harmony, and later in the 20th century, dissonance that we've been talking about, sighing and all these, getting to the resolution. In the 20th century, dissonance began to be, we call it dissonance as color, not as a wrong note that has to get to the right note. So it isn't necessarily sighing or zoister or any of that. It can just be a beautiful sound all unto itself. So the dissonance doesn't have to be resolved. Already in Liszt, Barbie was showing how he could use little sprightly dissonance as color. So it isn't a new idea in the 20th century, but it became sort of, why not? Why does it have to be? And some of you go, okay, I'm not taking that course, you know. We won't do that one. But this, and by the way, by now we use that note and we use that note, so we're using the whole piano, right? So it's evolved to the 7 1/3 octaves. Anyway, that's the idea of that piece, that you can just, let's just quickly tell me a little bit, a few of you, it's different from hearing Chopin in a way. So what's your experience hearing this kind of impressionistic sound? Anything that feels different? No? More modern? It is 1905. It is pretty modern. 120 years ago almost now, right? Yeah, true. It was the new century, the 20th century. What else? Dreamy. Yeah, there's even a word in French, effleurer, to lightly skim the keys. You don't go so deep in them. What else?
Watching the music was educational but not emotional.
Yeah.
I had to close my eyes to enjoy.
Well, I think that's true. Yeah. And in fact, for me, if I played it at the beginning, it might have been the better way to do it, because it's easier to keep. I'm playing away and I'm thinking, now I forgot to tell you that. And, you know, that's that other, the teacher car and the performer car, but this all. So there's emotion in all of that, not just notes and not just sound, but heart. And so with all of that in mind, I think Chris is here. Yes, please, come out and be introduced. So, hey, thank you. So, so before he speaks, we're just going to do this, and you'll include Marjorie, and later she'll know that she was sung to. Just give me a second. So, Chris, Cheryl, and Marjorie's the order, 29th, 30th, and 31st. And, well, that's coming up. Yeah, my birthday's in a week, so, but don't do it. It's too many names. Happy. Happy birthday.
Nobody ever does that. Hello? Yes. Yes, it is indeed the day today. So what a great way to, this is really cool, thanks. I don't know if you timed that perfectly, but having me here today, but that's really cool. One doesn't usually give performances on their birthday, but that's great. I'm thrilled to be here. Thank you for inviting me, Steve. I have a class at 10, so I'll keep it brief, which is unique for me, so we'll see how that feels. It's cool to play this piece that Steve asked me to play. I don't know if you got that, Steve, or not. I know I sent it to you rather late. It's a really neat piece. I've played over the years. It's really kind of fun. It's really kind of striking. It makes for a neat contrasting piece on a program. It's called "I Leap Through the Sky with Stars," which in itself is a very impressionistic sort of title. It comes from a Dogen poem, who was Zen poet from Japan, 1200 to 1253 is when he lived. And it comes from a poem that says, "For 54 years I've hung the sky with stars. Now I leap through, what shattering?" And it's written by Alexina Louis, who's a Chinese-Canadian pianist. She's based out of, born in Vancouver, lives in Toronto. I think I told you this was written in 97. It's actually written in 91. Sorry about that. I heard this piece probably in 97. It's probably where I conflated my dates. John Kimura Parker, who's a fabulous concert pianist, teaches at Rice University. I heard him play this on a recital in this really great place where I grew up. This philosophy professor from the University of Waterloo had this great little space in his house that was generally dirty. You kind of came through his kitchen, and it was sort of like they just ate, and now he had like the best artists ever come and play there. They would be on their way to go play in Toronto, like the Emerson String Quartet, the Juilliard String Quartet, the Penderecki String Quartet, every pianist you can imagine. And they would come through this guy's house, and it would be about 80 people, and you're sitting on folding chairs, and you'd be literally here, you know, or there'd be people around. There's an old fireplace that just smelled of smoke and, you know, lots of fires and memories. And he just sat in this leather chair over here, and it was amazing. It was such an amazing opportunity to hear some of the best talent in the world right up close, and that was during my undergrad years. Really a lot of fun. So I heard this piece, enough of my anecdotal evidence of where I got the piece. It's just a really great piece, and I think it ties in really beautifully with Steve presenting on Impressionism and Debussy. It's really sort of maybe the later 20th century version of Impressionism. Louis uses whole tone scales. She uses a really enhanced sense of rhythm, which is sort of what you hear in the Debussy, a very controlled, organized sense of rhythm. Ravel did the same thing, but different in his own way. I think Alexina Louis sort of has established her own kind of sound based on those various scale patterns. There's some sections in it that are marked senza misura, and senza misura means without bar line or without measure. And so there's periods in the piece that are free to the performer, which is really cool, to do what you like, however you feel, however you woke up that morning, however this music speaks to you. You can kind of time it. Notes are written, but the timing is up to you, which is very cool, and it depends on the space, whether you're in a beautiful 400-seat hall like this or in that small space where I first got to hear this piece. So it's a lot of fun. I hope you like it. It gets kind of boisterous in the middle. I think it must use every note on the piano. I've never actually looked at that, but I think it does on the keyboard. And insofar as even there's a long extended section in the middle with this going on, a rumbling underneath with stars going in the top. So I think that's probably enough prelude on that. I Leap Through the Sky with Stars by Alexina Louis. Hope you enjoy. Yes. So there it is. Any thoughts? Adjectives? What do you think? Oh, yeah, sorry. Yes.
I think when you got into the very, very high range of the piano, it almost became difficult to listen to.
Mm-hmm.
It's very irritating.
Mm-hmm.
And then when you got to the lower, it just seemed heavy.
Interesting.
He
Yeah.
was on the lowest note.
Yeah.
Sorry, he was on the lowest note of the piano, right?
Right. It probably would have been good with the lid up. It's a little more effective when it's full out. But yes, totally, 100%. Yeah, it's sort of a piece of extremes, is maybe a way, and maybe it makes you feel zen-like, and maybe it makes you feel angry, and maybe it makes you feel at peace, and maybe it makes you feel confused. And I think that's okay. I think that's what music does. I think that's the point of what we do, and that's what artists have done through the generations. I don't know that that's what they set out to do, but it's how their brains are wired. So they make us perplexed and they make us question things. So hopefully it does that for you. I think it's a fun piece to play. It showcases a lot of pianistic things, the colors, the touch, the pedal, the timing, the nuanced textures. It's really kind of all in there. Again, it's sort of a 20th century, late 20th century version of what maybe those guys were doing at the earlier part of the century. So.
I was thinking of this not just while he was playing, I was just in the music backstage here, but one day we talked about little kids playing lightning and thunder and electric, you know. And you could play this piece.
Totally.
I know.
Yeah.
Oh, but there's more to it than that.
Oh. Not really. But I appreciate the gesture. Thank you for having me.
Oh, this is great.
It very much.
Happy birthday.
Thanks, buddy.
Yeah.
I'll see you soon,
Well, we're not doing everything right, but so some of you said something and didn't have a microphone. So Barbie's going to play for us now, and we're going to go back in time, and we're going to get a romantic piece that is so beautiful by Robert Schumann. It's our only true piece by Schumann in this course, in the heart of the romantic time. I think I'm on here. And then if time flows well for that, then we move back into Debussy with a piece from his children's corner suite. He had a little baby girl about 2 years old, and he wrote this piece for Chow Chow, was or Choo Choo. I'm not sure how it's really said, but I'll get my French expert here, Sue Talbot, she'll help me say it correctly. But that was the nickname for his daughter, and he wrote a piece called The Children's Corner, and one of the pieces is The Snow is Dancing, which is coming soon to a climate near you. And so this is Schumann's F-sharp major, romance, and Barbie, I'm sure, has something to add.
Schumann wrote this for his wife, Clara, and it's really a piece expressing his love for her. And the melody, you'll hear it, it's in thirds, so if you bring out the upper note, it sounds one way, but if you bring out the lower note, so you have, so you can bring it. Oh. So I'm going to try to make that contrast one, so you'll hear the melody with the upper note being prominent as well as with the lower note prominent. And then they're also equal at certain times. And then the piece ends, it's only 2 pages long. The piece ends with repeated notes, and I feel that those repeated notes at the very end are the heartbeat. So that's my interpretation.
Okay. Can you turn the page, or should I?
I think I can.
Yeah.
You can be around.
I'll be around.
In case I forget. hear the two melodies. One is Clara and one is Robert. Robert Schumann fell in love with Clara Wieck, who was the daughter of his piano teacher. And he was living with them at the time, and she was like 12 or 13. And he fell in love with her while she was a child, basically. And then when he wanted to marry her, when she became of age, her parents refused. Her father said, no, you can't marry her. And they had to go to court to get permission. So it was, and they had a lot of children. So, and then when Robert Schumann started to go insane, he did go insane. When one of his children was with him in the living room, he walked out of the living room and went down and jumped off a bridge and tried to kill himself. And so after that, he was committed to an insane asylum. And he spent the last few years in the insane asylum and died there. And in the meantime, Brahms entered the life of the Schumanns. He was quite a lot younger and wanted to play for Schumann because he respected Schumann's work. He was highly, highly impressed with Schumann's work. At first, Schumann didn't welcome him in, but then he did, and they became the best of friends, and Brahms fell in love with Clara. And so after Schumann died, Brahms and Clara had a beautiful friendship, if not relationship, that lasted their entire lives into the 1890s, 1880s. So, all right, so can I play Snow is Dancing?
Yes.
Okay, Snow is Dancing by Debussy is about snow. Now, snow is different from water. It's soft and it's gentle. And so the only thing I hope to convey in this is my impression of snow. It's very, very gentle. Okay, here. like snow? Could you sort of, like if you hear the water ones, the reflections in the water and the other water pieces, you can sort of hear the little splash that the water makes when it rains, but hopefully this contrasts with Snow is Dancing. You feel the gentleness of the snow.
The flakes. Yeah, for sure. Thank you so much, Barbie. So hang around. So now we have our dear Marjorie. So I don't know, we just can't do it in absentia. So let's do it again this time. Happy birthday, Marjorie, which is tomorrow. Tomorrow. So, and anyway, here we go. You may come out and be honored. Happy birthday.
That arrangement.
Okay, so tell us what you're going to play for us. And we're in the 20th century, so everything is fair game because, I think it's on, yeah. Because at the beginning of the century is Debussy. He born in 1862, so he's already basically 40 years old when he writes his early 1900 pieces. And then we're at the end with Chris, and then we're back to Schumann, and then back to Debussy, and now Prokofiev. So here is a little bit.
Can y'all hear me? I'm going to play Diabolical Suggestions by Prokofiev. Suggestion diabolique, but Diabolical Suggestions. And Prokofiev composed this when he was 17. And at the time it was considered new, daring, and imaginative. And I find it kind of interesting that I read that when Prokofiev was 5, he overheard his family talking about a famine in India. So it inspired him to go to the piano and compose a little piece that he titled Indian Gallop. He composed it in the key of F major, but without the B flat. You know why? Because he was scared of the black keys. Well, let me tell you, I think he's come a long way since then. I mean, I really think I'm playing, it seems like all 88 keys. And I think the title's very appropriate. The opening, quite sinister. And it makes me think the whole piece is so quick. It goes by so fast. Reminds me of a tornado. You know, I grew up in the South. We had tornado drills. And, but the air is just very still. The sky's green. You see those clouds beginning to form, the little wall cloud, the funnel cloud, and then all of a sudden, it touches down. And all havoc and chaos ensue, and then just as quickly as it appears, it disappears. Anyway, that's what I think of when I play this piece. It also disturbs my dog when I'm practicing this. He seems quite concerned. Okay, but I'm gonna try this from memory because, as you see, I don't think I could read the music while playing this.
So, this is quite a ride in the 20th century, isn't it? It's, the devilish part of this is that in ancient times, the monks of the monasteries, they learned to sing. And you've heard this, and you hear this in maybe in chants in Catholic faiths or others. So they would, and these are called parallel fifths, and it was called organum or organum, sometimes it said so. But if they had to sing something, these are called perfect fifths, but this is called a diminished fifth. And it's very difficult to sing. So it's called, it was called by, I think the Pope probably declared it, the devil in music is the interval of the diminished fifth. Or, to us it sounds pretty, it's part of jazz, it's part of Chopin, it's part of everything, but in the early days of harmony, they could sing fifths or fourths, but they avoided that ugly diminished fifth or augmented fourth that's going to be on your final exam. So you better get it.
Did y'all talk about polytonality?
No.
Okay.
Not so much.
Well, in this piece, what's kind of cool is
Are you on? Is she on? Okay, good.
you have a nice chord of A major and C major, but paired together is kind of clashing. And I can't play with both hands right now
Oh,
with
and
this
then
microphone.
what about those octaves that aren't octaves?
Oh, yeah.
So I was-
so fun.
or it's ugliness on purpose. In a way, I mean, it's like dissonance as color. Yeah? What else? Happy birthday to you. This is great.
Did y'all find that disturbing? Are you going to go maybe download, have that and you're listening? Crank it up in the car.
It's on your PowerPoint, so you can go home and enjoy that and get with it in terms of just opening yourself to hearing different sounds and what they express and what they mean. And sort of diabolical is intentional, right, in this piece. Kind of impish, but more very aggressive and assertive. Yeah.
Okay. Well, so fun being with y'all again.
Yeah, maybe before Marjorie disappears here, just we've been getting some responses. So what's your response to this piece? Anybody? Yeah, Jerry.
I was just thinking about Prokofiev himself as a child. And what
He composed this piece at age 17, but that little piece that he was playing, he composed when he was 5. And his mama showed him how much better it would sound with that black key.
So he knew his ability, and he was in college, I think it was in St. Petersburg, and there were 2 major conservatories in Russia at the time, in St. Petersburg and in Moscow. Whichever one he was at, it came time for a concerto competition, and it was usual to play a Beethoven concerto or a Chopin concerto or a Schumann concerto, but Prokofiev wrote his own concerto for the concerto competition. And they said, you can't do this. And he said, I can because I did. and he played it and he won the concerto competition. So he knew his value. He was not maybe the nicest man, but there's some great, beautiful music and very playful, very clever music as well. You can get to know all these composers on your own, look up some pieces. But he was apparently not the friendliest soul. And so one of the stories that comes up is that he was backstage after a concert and somebody came up to meet him and they said, and this is paraphrased of course, but they said, "Oh, sir, what a supreme pleasure to have met you." And he said, "I can assure you there's been no pleasure on my part at all." So please come up and talk to us afterwards. And we'll think of something clever to say that will not be endearing. Anyway, he was not the most endearing soul, but and so there's an edge, you know, that can be in his writing. Well, I am just so appreciative of Marjorie and of Barbara, and of Chris, who I had forewarned. I said, I want you to play at least this one piece. He's Mr. Busy around here, but also he's enjoys playing the 20th and 21st century music especially. So I asked him if he would do this piece, and he did. So that was great. So he's being thanked in absentia here. And thanks to Ron back here, Ron Scholl from MCAT, Missoula Community Access Television, because he makes it all happen. So if you missed class or want to see it again or whatever, you can, just for the next 2 weeks, right?
Yes, it will be in your share file for 2 weeks.
Yeah, and so then that's kind of review if you wish. You can't download it, but you can view it again, right? I think it's the deal. And we're coming up on end of time, so I thought maybe we'd have just some, if you want to go back, I know you're busy.
Yeah, okay, great.
And, yeah.
Thank you,
Oh,
Marjorie.
Marjorie's recital, March 9th, I think, or 7th. Sunday afternoon.
March 9th. 3 o'clock.
So the spring flowers will be starting to imagine themselves already by March 9th. So that's coming up, and Barbie plays a lot, and just look for things that are going on here all the time. So maybe, yeah, if there are just some last, we're graduating now, yeah, please.
How did Prokofiev fare through the Russian Revolution and Lenin and Stalin and all that?
He moved, and for a while, he moved to New York City to get away from all of that, and thought that he was going to relocate. And then he became so homesick for Russia that he went back to the Soviet Union. And he had to do many things, and it's in his biographies and in music history books, that he had to apologize many times profusely in writing, "Oh, exalted Stalin," you know. How could I have possibly thought that writing music in the Western style would be appealing to my Russian compatriots? I promised to write only folk music and Russian themes and Russian heritage into my writing. And he didn't mean any of it, you know. He wrote it, but he didn't mean it. But he went back, maybe apropos of his kind of dynamic nature. He was in New York City, and at the time with his youngish wife, and they had an apartment, and he was building some bookshelves for her. And he was very careful to observe, you know, there's quiet hours in apartments in New York City because there have to be. So he wouldn't pound on nails while the, no, it wasn't, I'm ahead of myself in the story. He was actually practicing, and his practicing sounded like pounding on nails, let's put it that way. And here's what happened. So people would bang on the walls and the ceilings and the floors above, and please stop that horrible sound. And he said, and they'd come to the door, "Please, my children are trying to sleep." And he said, "Well, they can sleep during quiet hours because I quit, you know, practicing during quiet hours." So he just was getting the riot act by his neighbors. So that's when he went to Ace Hardware or wherever and got a 2x4 and 2,000 nails. And for like 2 weeks, he pounded nails all day long instead of practicing the piano. And so they couldn't complain because he had honored don't play music during, you know, we're sick of it. So he just pounded nails for 2 weeks, and then he went back to practicing, and nobody ever bothered him again. But he did go back to Russia, and I don't know what year, but it was a experience kind of iffy in lots of ways. I'm trying to remember if he's the one that died the same day as Stalin or Shostakovich. I can't remember which now. You guys can look it up. He died in 1953. Did Stalin die in 1953? Anybody know their history? Look it up. Yeah, I think they died the same day. You could look it up and fact check. Fact checks are good. Barbie, anything you want to add about?
The concerto that he won the competition at the conservatory was his first, and it's D-flat major, and it sounds like nothing but sunshine. It's a huge D-flat major chord.
Right.
It is so beautiful. And there's this big D-flat chord, and it makes you want to stand up and smile and look at the sunshine. If you get a chance, look up the first piano concerto of Prokofiev. It's glorious.
Yeah, please do that. It would be great. Another very interesting thing, he wrote 3 sonatas during World War II. And you know, Russians were starving and people were dying everywhere in Europe, and it was just the most horrific time. So you can imagine that the music in some ways reflects this, and we can't say that it was intentionally reflective of the World War II, but we do call those 3 sonatas number 6, 7, and 8. If you wanted to listen to them, they're called the War Trilogy because they were written in wartime. And the third movement of the 7th sonata, the last movement goes. It's very driven and very just emotionally outburst, but a great piece of music. I heard Emil Gilels, a very famous Russian pianist, and I think departed now, but when I was a student at the conservatory, he was probably in his 30s and his career was coming forth, and he came to Oberlin and he played for us. And it was just so riveting because he was raised in that tradition, and he played the Prokofiev 6th Sonata, which is the first of the War Trilogy. And it was so intent when he played. And if you can imagine me sitting up there and he's at the piano here, and I think I was the only one in the balcony that part because I just wanted to, you see everybody's hands, but I wanted to watch his face. It was so intense. It's like I don't think his eyes ever caught my face even because he was so focused on the music. But it's that kind of music that just grabs you and holds you because it's got some basis in life. That life is not always reflecting roses, right? There's a lot of things that go on in this world. What else can we share?
I think we have time for one more. There's one more question.
I did have a question, and maybe somebody would want to answer it, a question for you. So if you all thought of one thing that you learned that was interesting that you never knew before, would there be such a thing for each of you? And maybe a hand goes up and somebody says, oh, I learned something. Here's somebody. I'm sorry I don't know names, but Suzette.
I guess this going through the history helped me understand how the piano expanded from the harpsichord, and then the growth and the use of all the chords, and why, when you go back to Bach, why it was so tight, and why they wrote. And that part of history, it just kind of helped me see that part of the piano. The development from harpsichord to piano.
Yeah, and you get a feel, in a way, for all of the things that fit with that sized instrument. Right, thank you. Anything else? I learned nothing and enjoyed it so much. Anything else?
I think that we should thank Stephen.
Yeah.
Woo-hoo!
So all these slides are here for you. This is just a quick fun thing. That picture of that guy, that's him playing, his playing. And the Boston Symphony has a summer home, and it's at Tanglewood in Massachusetts, out in the western part of the state. And Andre, who was playing there, and you saw his picture, and I ended up as roommates. They just assigned you to be a roommate with somebody. We got to be friends. And I saw him years later. He was playing in Alice Tully Hall in New York City with some very famous players, and he's a very wonderful player. And we got to be friends, and I go backstage because I haven't seen him for 30 years, and He looked at me and I looked at him and he said, "Are you Steve Hesla from Wakanda, South Dakota?" And I thought, this guy has total recall. So you can hear Andre's great playing. And then I am playing Rachmaninoff's Second Concerto with orchestra here in 2012 when we dedicated the piano that is in the cage back here that is called the Hesla Steinway, actually, not because I gave a lot of money, but because I knew people who gave a lot of money. And in 10 weeks, we raised the part that the university couldn't pay from wonderful people who love music. So anyway, that is, I guess, just something you can, for the next 2 weeks only, you can hear. And so I'm just sharing it with you because I'm proud of the performance, but I was especially proud that we got a great new piano that will be used Friday night. This one's also wonderful. This piano was born the same year I was born. And I'm still ambulatory, and so is it. So pianos endure, and we endure as long as we can, and happily so. So anyway, enjoy your time, and thanks again to Barbie, to Michelle, to Ron Scholl, to Terry, who's probably gone from here, and everybody and all of you, Chris, for playing. And it's just been a joy to be with you, all of you.
Thank you. And please remember to do your evaluations.